Welcome to the For Love and Money podcast, the show where business and social purpose meet to inspire a movement for positive change. Here's your host, Carolyn Butler-Madden.
It gives me great pleasure today to introduce our guest whose driving purpose, which is to catalyse and lead positive impact, has led her to become a founder of an innovative and highly impactful startup. Melanie Greblo is currently founder and CEO at Scriibed and Banksia Academy, with a shared theory of change to achieve long-term financial independence for women victim survivors of domestic and family violence through full social and economic participation. Mel is an idea synthesist and strategist with a proven record of achievement in business, social ventures, community engagement, and culture transformation, with a deep commitment to diversity, inclusion, innovation, and systemic social change. Her impressive career trajectory includes 7 years with the team at Impact Asia Pacific, where she curated the annual Impact Investment Summit and the region's first Gender Lens Investment Summit, 10 years with the Coterie for Renewal, a global human development and learning community, which she founded in 2011, and a number of prior roles leading social and not-for-profit organisations. Melanie's strengths converge around systems change, connecting divergent points to create shared value, creating flourishing cultures, driving engagement, building long-term partnerships, strategic communication, community building, catalysing policy change and action. Wow, Melanie, thank you so much for joining us here on the For Love and Money podcast.
Thank you, Carolyn. It's such a pleasure to be here. I've listened to so many great episodes and heard so many other great reports. So it's lovely to be here.
That's so wonderful to hear. And I'm so glad to have you on as a guest. We met in the coffee queue at Purpose Conference in October last year, 2022. And we got chatting, and as soon as you told me what you were doing through Scriibed and Banksia Academy, I knew then and there I wanted you to come on as a guest. So I'm going to kick off with the first question we ask all our guests. Thinking about purpose in business and workplaces, does love have a role to play, do you think?
Well, I love the question for starters.
Thought you might.
Yeah, and the answer is an unequivocal yes. Absolutely it does. As many of your guests on this podcast and listeners would probably, attest to, that times have changed a lot in business over the last sort of, particularly decade, but probably over the last sort of 25 years. And I feel like I was reflecting on this question a little bit this morning, and business has been shaped obviously within the structures of patriarchy that most of our structures and systems have been built in that framework, and with that came a lot of language associated with patriarchal imperatives, so war and sport. And so a lot of the language in business has always been about battling and competition and strategic maneuvers and allies, and it still plays out in our language in business. Every day you hear this language that's really bedded in conflict and you could say in hate, in the human emotion that causes, or that is basically kind of fed from fear. I could think my entire career I've just wondered and asked the question, can't we do this differently? Can't we create business and community life and society around a different language and vernacular, and one that kind of comes from a poetic sensibility, one that draws on music and art and all the things that we kind of might associate with love. And so yes, the answer to that question is yes. Not only can we, does love have a role to play, or can we bring love into that conversation? But I really believe we should.
That's a really interesting perspective, Mel, and I thank you for it. It's one I hadn't thought of in those terms before, and I haven't had put to me in those terms before. But you know, that sort of patriarchy being shaped by sport and military and competition, and you know, faster, harder, bigger, stronger. It is without doubt. Business has been shaped in a very male way, but that militaristic sort of thing I hadn't considered before, and I think you're right. And it's always lacked this sense of not just warmth but abundance and opportunity, hasn't it? It's very much, you know, you've got to fight for everything, and you know, the competition side of things, and when you just have that focus and no balance for that, that's where it becomes unhealthy, doesn't it? So thank you.
Yeah, there's a beautiful well, I think what's emerging too, and it's less about gender roles, I feel, but more about that masculine and feminine kind of energy that we all embody in every single one of us, and that where somehow the feminine is coming more into its own in every human being, but also in the workplace and in business, and even in, you know, probably even in policy thinking and development as well, I would say. And that's super exciting because, I mean, obviously it's not that, you know, that the feminine is generally, you know, where we nurture love and it is that more nurturing kind of aspect and energy. So yeah, that's really exciting to me at the moment too, that not only are we seeing gender roles and gender equality kind of advance, you know, which is brilliant and still a long way to go, but we're also seeing that kind of just, it's not just about getting more women in leadership to change that. It's actually that we can all embrace this inner kind of qualities, and you know, likewise with masculine energy and what that can bring, but if it's more balanced with the feminine, then it's we can see it's really exciting when I think about it. I think it's also what gives me this incredibly tragically optimistic outlook on life. And you know,
it's not tragic. That's the kind of outlook we absolutely need if we're to move forward and if we're to accelerate, you know, this movement. I think you know, this idea that you're talking about is one that crops up a lot in conversations with my guests, and it is such an important one, and it's moving you know, this feminine energy away from being the soft skills, which are nice to have but not, you know, they're not the core of what business needs to be. It's a nice to have, towards this feminine energy being powerful, right? Not soft, you know, not a soft skill, not nice to have, but actually powerful, because when we channel it and we integrate it with the masculine energy, you know, when we bring it together and balance it out, that's where huge opportunity opens up for more people and more stakeholders.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, that's the kind of power that I think we need more of, and particularly with the challenges that we're facing globally and you know, down to the community level as well.
Absolutely. Now you're active, you're right in the center of this, and you're tackling one of these areas of need in a really innovative way. So can you share your background story that led to where you are today with your business Scriibed and with the Banksia Academy?
Yeah, sure. So Carolyn, as you sort of reflected through my bio before, my whole career has very much been about impact and purpose. I feel very fortunate that actually it was a very early experience in my life that probably shaped my career journey, and that was coming out of university, feeling like the world was my oyster, and I could have, the world was literally at my feet. And that's what I'd always thought going through university. But not long after I finished university, my younger sister, who had been diagnosed with cancer and was sort of going through treatment, we realized that we were told that she wasn't going to live. And so she died in the July after I finished university. So that literally took the ground out from underneath me that I thought was solid, and that I thought was this world before me that I could do anything with, and just shook the foundations of what I knew life to be. And I think, from that very early experience, holding my little sister's hand, who was not quite 21 when she died, take her last breaths, and it was one of those things that would change me forever, obviously. And I wouldn't see until years down the track in which ways that would change me and shape the rest of my life. But that became quite apparent in the work I went into early after I finished university. Was straight into the kind of community sector, and then other not-for-profit organizations, a stint in the arts, which was fantastic, and then into leading home hospice, which was my first CEO role. So home hospice was a national social venture set up to try to sort of really change culture and the conversations that we were having around care at end of life, and how we did that in Australia, and how we learnt from other kind of innovative practices globally, what we could do here and create kind of social capital at that very particular time in people's lives where, that was often feared. So that was kind of my first big kind of entry into social change and what it could look like and how you do social change. And, that came directly from my early experience in life too. So fast forward, there was another big role as a CEO of School Aid Trust. And then I took maternity leave to have my second child, and ended up setting up the coterie for renewal not long after he was born. So that was, a period of life that I was kind of really interested in, the inner workings of human beings and developing our soft skills, leadership capacity, capacity to connect, to co-lead, to co-design, a group of people who are shaping futures differently to how we've thought of as being the only way in the past, outliers, if you like, doing things a little bit differently. And so we worked a lot with, poetry, music, the arts, and still do. Even though I've taken quite a step back now, obviously, from that business. So that was a really wonderful time. And I guess running my own business, I was extremely grateful as I was going through some difficult and really big challenges with my children and my family, that then basically planted the seed for starting Scriibed and Banksia Academy. So that's what's brought me to the last sort of couple of years. And Scriibed is a year old next month. Banksia Academy isn't even a year old. But we're it's been an incredible journey so far in startup land. Certainly not for the faint of heart, as you would have heard.
It certainly isn't. But congratulations on 1 year. That's a huge achievement. So I just want to go back on that, and first of all, just say how sorry I am that you had to go through that with your sister, because that must have been so traumatic, and obviously had a huge impact on your life. I was talking to another guest the other day, and Abdel Aziz, who is a purpose expert based in LA. We were talking about how a lot of people in this sector, who are really building this revolution in business, right, and who are so passionate about it and committed to it, it usually comes about as a result of some kind of trauma. And obviously your sister's death and what she went through had a huge impact on you. But I guess, I was just thinking as you were talking, it comes down to when something like that happens, you feel all the vulnerabilities of being a human, right?
Yeah, that's right. And it's it's a particularly unique, I guess, experience to have as a younger person too, to experience that level of loss that is literally the loss of life. It makes you reflect probably a lot earlier than a lot of other people do or would on, the fact that, life is finite, and, all those kind of tropes that come out, like, you don't know when your time's up and you've got to live each day and all that sort of thing. They're actually true. But you experience that in a very visceral way. Obviously, it's not just an idea that you kind of try to remind yourself of every now and then. It becomes a living, breathing thing that actually I've seen physically, that people take their last breath and then they're no longer. And so what do we do with every breath that we're gifted with? And not to look over the loss and grief in a kind of a Pollyanna way, but also not to kind of dive into, and I feel like too that we've come to use the word trauma, probably overuse it recently. And it was really horrible what happened to my sister, and for our family to go through that. There were probably some traumatic elements to it, particularly maybe more for some of us than others. But I didn't ever feel traumatized by it, I don't think. And since, I guess, working in the end of life space as well, and it's interesting, I've heard the phrase, and we've worked with it in the past, of post-traumatic growth, and that's a real possibility, and how we kind of foster resilience at the same time as acknowledging deep grief and loss is really interesting to me, and probably really particularly interesting too now, working with women survivors of domestic and family violence in the academy and at Scriibed, that what can trigger that, and how can we create the environment and the conditions to really ripen post-traumatic growth, in lieu of post-traumatic stress, and how can we lift out of our traumatic experiences, I guess, and again, without glossing over anything that's been really horrendous, and the deep scars that are left for mostly women who experience domestic violence. So that's part of the work, that kind of underlying curiosity and question around that as well, to support women into their power again, and to be resilient, and get through the really tough parts of what's happened to them, and see a horizon that's positive's not the right word, a bright horizon for themselves.
Opportunity. Crawling out of the darkness, I guess. So let's get into Scriibed and the Banksia Academy. Can you share with us, tell us what it is exactly?
Sure. So Scriibed is a for-profit, for-purpose business. There's two parts to the business in terms of what we offer our clients, customers. One is we've built a product for HR leaders to kind of streamline all of the administration that they have around their, extremely high volume of workplace meetings. So it's a web-based app. It records workplace conversations. We then provide a summary of the meeting and next actions back to the HR leader. comes with a link to the recording of that meeting, and an unedited transcript of the meeting if you needed that. If you needed a fully edited transcript, we can do that on demand as well. So it's basically there to support kind of any kind of escalation of workplace matters that might go to Fair Work or workplace relations, work cover, anything like that. But also it's there to just support HR leaders who have increasingly just massive volumes of meetings that they work through every day, every week, and are getting bogged down in all of that administration. So we combine AI with human input, and the human input component of what we do is powered by women survivors of domestic and family violence. So we're providing them with safe, secure, flexible work opportunities. They can work remotely. For women that are transitioning through housing, they can work wherever they are. They can keep that employment. And the Banksia Academy then comes in and delivers a whole lot of wraparound supports around those women to really help them thrive at work and in their lives. So the Academy supports Scriibed employees, but it can equally and does equally support other women either into work who are survivors and haven't worked for some time, possibly, and supports other women who are already in professional roles but need that extra support to maintain their employment and thrive at work as well. So women survivors of domestic and family violence face a number of barriers to employment. We're learning more and more about the impacts of domestic and family violence on women at work who are already employed, and we're learning more and more about the impact of that on workplaces. So yeah, it's the Academy's there kind of for the full kind of spectrum of support for workplaces and employees in those workplaces, but also for women who are trying to get back to work and return to work.
I love it. I mean, it solves a problem, it solves a business need, and it solves it in a more sophisticated way than obviously people, are using transcription services. But the challenge that more and more people are finding is the accuracy, so it's not serving their needs. And I love how you bring in the human element, but you're doing it in a way that tackles one of society's big problems. When you first told me about this, it was like, that's brilliant. That's just superb. But what I'm interested in is what came first. Did you have the business idea first, or was it the impact that you wanted to achieve, or was it a blend of both? I'm really curious to understand, particularly with your background and what you've done, what was the trigger point for it starting?
So the trigger point was through my own lived experience of going through the family court system. And even prior to that, there were many parts of a journey that I was on that, as a social entrepreneur, I couldn't help but kind of think at certain points, oh my gosh, that's so broken. We need to fix that. That's broken. We can fix that. That's broken. And I knew that something would come to me eventually, and I kind of just held it quite loosely to the side while I got on with life. And but I really started to want to make a difference, and in this particular area. So basically what happened in the end was I came across a market failure, and it was by accident that, without getting into all the nitty-gritty, that there was a part of the process in the family court where I needed transcription. And it was extremely expensive, like just off the charts expensive. So I couldn't quite understand why that was. And that's when I started to piece the pieces together, because when you think about transcription, I was like, well, that's kind of work that you could do anywhere and possibly even any time of the day, depending on what's needed. And then I sort of saw what was happening in the industry, and obviously AI has changed the industry, really completely, and will continue to do so. But there is a period at the moment where obviously the accuracy is needed for certain clients and customers, and it's not there with AI yet. So And it may get there, it may not, like people are saying it will get there, and it may, it might be 5 years, but could be less, might be 10 years off. But obviously the value that we've built into the product for HR managers is this, we summarize the meetings and set out the next action. So all of that kind of time that you usually sit at your desk after a meeting, typing it all up and summarizing and setting out the next actions, then sharing that with the people that were in the meeting, we take all of that away, and it's done for you in, minutes rather than hours. So yeah, that's where the idea came. And so obviously having a social enterprise background, I knew that we could, there's something in this, hopefully, that we can provide employment, this type of employment, to this cohort of women. And then it just grew from there. So obviously I was thinking about then the digital economy and participation in that, this kind of aspirational a framework that we what I don't want and what I feel like women don't need is funneling into low-skilled, low-paid jobs that basically keep them living below the poverty line. Recent research tells us that 60% of single mothers are victims of domestic and family violence, and that's enormous. And we've only just learnt that. So we might have guessed it before, but the data actually tells us that now. So that's huge. And so the needs of single mothers alone are significant in terms of what sort of incomes they need to survive. But then you layer in the complexity around experiences with domestic and family violence, which is 60% of those mothers. And then you get a whole other picture of, challenge that's really difficult to overcome. So that's sort of then seeded the idea for, well, okay, if we're going to employ these women and provide jobs, how we're going to support them, and what does that look like? So very early, we invited a group of 10 women from across Australia, different ages, different backgrounds, who all had lived experience, to co-design from the very outset what Banksia Academy could look like and should look like, what it could deliver, and how it would actually support these women. So that was... And the Academy was born.
Oh, wow. And I mean, it's got multi-layered value, what you're doing with Scriibed and the Banksia Academy. And that's what's so exciting. And it's innovative. And this is the thing, right? That when you are looking at solving societal needs, you can't help but drive innovation, because it forces you to think outside of the way things, this is the way we always do things. And there is such potential in that. I think it's incredibly exciting.
Enjoying the podcast? If you're looking for more inspiration, head to our website, thecauseeffect.com.au, for more resources on how you can start using your business as a force for good. Or buy the For Love and Money book. Every copy sold allows us to protect 1 square metre of rainforest. Help us save 10,000 square metres by 2025.
I read that your theory of change covers both organisations. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, sure. So the theory of change is essentially that if we can invest, obviously money, investment, dollars, education, training and skills in higher skilled work in the digital economy, then we can, support these women to secure work in the digital economy. Tends to be higher paid than other lower skilled jobs. Then we can see these women exiting social housing perhaps and being able to rent in the private rental market. They've got more secure housing. They could even be in housing ownership. That changes a lot for women, obviously, and if we support them and wrap all of the right supports around them, they're more likely to maintain that level of employment and thrive in life. Then you see intergenerational change and transformation. So whether these children are growing up in these single mother households who have experienced domestic and family violence, the trajectory can often be that the cycles are repeated. And we know anyway from other kind of cohorts that, that intergenerational cycles of disadvantage tend to repeat unless something breaks it. And so that's the theory of change, that we can actually break those cycles, and certainly that we can break the cycles of women experiencing domestic and family violence returning to violent partners because of financial reasons. So the same research that tells us that 60% of single mothers are victims of domestic and family violence is work done by Dr. Anne Summers in a report called The Choice, Violence or Poverty, that came out last year. And yes, that she talked about, that the number one reason most women return to violent relationships is are financial reasons. They simply can't afford to live on their own, so they go back.
You mentioned it before, and I didn't pick it up, but I just can't get past this stat that you shared, that 60% of single mothers are victims of domestic and family violence. That's horrifying. That's just shocking that it is such a high level. I've not come across that stat before. That's absolutely horrifying.
We do have, I know people, we hear it certainly in the sector, that there's an epidemic of family and domestic violence in this country. It's just shockingly prevalent, and by its nature, it's difficult to bring it into the light. And when you can't bring something into the light, it's really hard to change it. So obviously there's lots of layers to it. The national plan addresses many of them. It's really positive, but there's there's so much more to do as well. And, we see, I guess, our theory of change in creating that kind of intergenerational transformation is that what we're doing actually then becomes also about prevention. So it's not just in this recovery phase that we work by focusing our investment and attention on that recovery phase. We're actively engaged in prevention as well. So yeah, that's sort of a key part of what the theory of change is.
And I guess it's prevention at a number of levels. One, because they're less likely to return back to the relationship with the offender, but also the intergenerational impact of it as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Huge, absolutely huge. So do you have you had investment on Scriibed? Have you got funding of it?
We have indeed. So we've had some early seed investors, and we're raising capital at the moment to give us runway for the business to grow and really to get Scriibed for HR into the market. We've got some early customers, which is fantastic. It's been great learning along the way, and obviously we need to keep refining the technology and building that. So super exciting. In the academy, we had some wonderful seed investment into the philanthropic investment into the academy, including the Vasudhara Foundation, who provided a $100,000 grant to sort of kick things off, which was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. And we're talking to government. There's a lot of really positive movement at the moment. So that looks like 2023 is shaping up to be a huge one.
That's exciting. And so you've had some early customers, some clients. Can you tell me, you don't have to give any names away unless you want to give them a shout out, but can you tell me what kind of clients are working with you, and when you approach them or when you're referred to them or whatever it is, how do they respond to your pitch? I'm curious to understand, is it the individual, is it the person that you're speaking to, the decision maker, who really drives the conversion of the relationship, or is it something within the organization?
Yeah, I think it's multi-layered, and so there's a bigger context, obviously, that you and your listeners and guests would all know about, and that is the greater context of ESG, corporate social responsibility, the environment that business is now working in, and genuinely wanting to and needing to are two different things, but there's sometimes they overlap, which is where they're most powerful, where there's a genuine need to do business better and differently. And then there's a need to be for, shareholder activists and things like that. So it's a great kind of context that sits behind what we're doing, because there is a lot of energy around, okay, well, we've got to definitely be seen to be doing better. But we really actually want to do better too and do business better. So there's a social procurement context as well that sort of fits within. And so all of that kind of more macro kind of context is certainly opening doors for us. And then the kind of, if you bring it down to the next layer, and that is, well, we're all about this impact that we want to achieve. And then the next layer is we've actually got fantastic products here as well, so, and service. And so in Scribed, we've got two sets of clients really. One is more kind of traditional transcription. They could be academic researchers, market researchers, podcasters, anyone who wants their audio recordings transcribed, and especially where they need those transcribed accurately. So we've been working with, they wouldn't mind a shout out, I'm sure, at Impact Studios at UTS. So they did a whole lot of podcast interviews for their oral history program, and so we transcribed all of that audio hours for them, and then all of that is then stored in the State Library archives, and that needs to be formatted a certain way. So we did that work as well. So it's hours of work for our women and for the business. It takes a huge load off them internally, obviously, more cost effective to outsource it, that sort of thing. But also then, okay, the transcription market's huge. Why us? And the why us piece is because of the social impact that we partner with our clients to deliver. So it doesn't mean that the service we're delivering or the product we're delivering is subpar. It's got to be just as good as anywhere else. So quality assurance is all in place. So that's been really wonderful, and the goal certainly is to work with more of those kinds of clients, and be a provider of choice for all of those kinds of clients that are currently using another transcription service, whether it's a purely AI driven one or one that uses offshore resources to do the editing and make sure it's accurate. That's very common, and they're paid peanuts to do it, and it's sometimes still not accurate because English isn't their first language. So it's all of that sort of layering in the why behind what we do and why we're best. And then the HR customers, it's really kind of again comes down to first and foremost, is the product actually going to do what it says it's going to do, and is it going to save me the time? Is it going to increase my compliance? Is it going to reduce my risk? All of that sort of thing. That's their first priority, and that's our first priority for them. I guess what opens the doors in terms of first being able to speak to some of the individual HR leaders that we do is the social impact piece as well. So in a sea of competition, I guess, it's kind of that's what's opening the doors and getting us in front of the customers that we want to be in front of.
Yeah, it's a very compelling point of difference. I'm curious, you talked about the fact that you target HR teams because they have a huge amount of meetings, but I guess there are other departments who have that as well. Yeah. I'm interested in knowing, is it HR departments are often led by women with empathy, who are people leaders and have people skills? Is that part of your targeting strategy as well?
It wasn't interesting. It wasn't necessarily part of our targeting strategy. At HR, the kind of decision to sort of go deeply into that market was really a commercial one as a startup. Obviously the use cases for the need for transcription sort of spans so many different verticals and industries. So what we couldn't do, what we didn't have the means to do from a funding perspective was to go to market more broadly. How on earth are we going to do that? We don't have massive, marketing and advertising budgets. Google AdWords, things like that. So we had to try to get really focused. And then we designed with them. We designed with our customer. So we got to the heart of what we assumed a problem, and instead of building a product straight away that we thought we could fix that problem, we did very intense kind of work with the target market to really kind of validate the problem first, and then start to look at what the solution could look like. So yeah, we designed it with the customer on board, and yeah, that's how we've ended up with Scribe for HR. But the web-based app clearly has enormous potential in terms of other use cases, and there's, think of every board meeting, other use cases in government, other kind of civic kind of functions that need to take place, that need recording or need minutes taken, things like that. So yeah, the sky's the limit really in terms of use cases and where we might go from here, which is really exciting. But I guess 2023 is definitely about consolidating what we've built so far and really kind of digging deep into the HR market. Yeah,
and it's smart to target a niche, and as everyone says, your target is not your market, but you need to have that clarity and that niche so that you can really deliver something of supreme value to that niche target, and focus on them rather than just go blur broadly. What do you think with the clients that are using your services? Do you find there's a shared identity? Like, is there a shared narrative between you, the ones that really lean into it strongly and faster than others because of the social impact side? Do you think they connect with your purpose and the vision?
Yeah, they absolutely do. And part of that also is because, the other thing we all know is that domestic and family violence doesn't discriminate. It's happening everywhere in every kind of socioeconomic group in the country. Notwithstanding the fact that we also know it impacts Indigenous First Nations women more than non-Indigenous. So I want to acknowledge that. But otherwise, it's everywhere. It's in the women that you are sharing an office with. May have had an experience of domestic and family violence. It's everywhere, and so our clients recognize that, within their workplaces, it could be about 20% of their workforce who is impacted by this.
Yeah, wow.
So we also have an opportunity to support those workplaces through Banksia Academy. So there's this incredible kind of picture of shared value that starts to take shape, and that is incredibly exciting, that we can deliver a product / service that meets a real business need, that we can at another level support the women in their workplace that have experienced domestic and family violence, and the workplace more broadly with policies and anything else that we can support them with through the academy. Yeah, and we can deliver this employment at the other side to victims as well. So it's it's quite a unique convergence of those things and that kind of impact at the center of it. Yeah, it's really, so that everyone sees that. It's really obvious when we start talking that there's a lot of power in this and a lot of potential.
As you say, it's that shared value. It's that value at multiple levels to multiple stakeholders at multiple times, and it's just smart. It's intelligent, right? I love it. I think it's huge, and I think you're going to have so much success, and I really hope you do. As we start to wrap this interview up, I want to bring it back to love and money. and ask you, what do you think about that relationship between love and money, purpose and profit? What's your view on that?
Yeah, such an interesting question, because it's so fraught for so many people, isn't it? I mean, their relationship with money, let alone when you add the word love to it. For me, love is, firstly, it's an act. It's a verb, and it's an act of the will. And where you kind of place that word together with money, it's, well, how can we ignite an act of the will with money to create something better than how it was before for someone or something? And that's the power of purposeful business for me, that certainly that we can leave the world better than we found it, but the money is not just the transaction piece. That's what it's traditionally been thought of as, transactional, but it has just as much energy, intentionality, purpose to it as love does. And yeah, I think when we combine the two, that's when we can kind of step change what we see in the world and create the kind of change that we really need to create right now. But you just look to it, like how the combination of love and money is driving so many young people. We all know we need to earn a living. We're rewriting how we do business right now, and it's super exciting, as you know, and why we do business. It's from the kind of, again, that kind of macro look at how various countries now measure, instead of measure GDP, measure gross national happiness or whatever it might be. Well-being is a huge part of the conversation, and it's not just, it's at its deepest kind of seed, in the deepest seed of that is not the desire to wash and pink wash and green wash and impact wash. It's real. I think that seed that's germinating is real, and we're all craving something different for ourselves in the world, and COVID really amplified that in positive ways, I think, as well. So yeah, exciting to see.
It really is an exciting time, and I think it is inevitable. I mean, we met at the Purpose Conference, and I came away from that conference just thinking, I've been on this, beating this drum and trying to support businesses and share the opportunity, educate businesses as well, for years now, and it's been an uphill battle, but something has shifted. And I came away from that conference just thinking, this movement is unstoppable. It's taken a long time to get to this point, but the energy and trajectory and the quality of the conversations and the commitment, and it's not just about people's passion to create change. It's it's the backup, it's the investment part as well. It is a paradigm shift, without any doubt whatsoever. And to see organizations, to see businesses like Scriibed and what you're doing with the Banksia Academy, I just think you are brave, because you're leading from the front, but you are providing inspiration and a light to others. And I just hope that people, when they learn about you, it will inspire them to actually start thinking differently and start questioning, why do we have to do things this way? Start being more curious, because that's, we need that curiosity to challenge the way things are, and to create the change that we want to see. So yeah, congratulations, and thank you for the work you've done, because I know it wouldn't be easy. I imagine it would be incredibly hard, and I'm sure it's been a challenge. But thank you, Mel.
My pleasure. Thank you, Carolyn, for the opportunity to have this wonderful conversation. It's been gorgeous. Yeah.
Oh, I've really enjoyed it. last word to you for business leaders who are, thinking about how do we become more purposeful? How do we lean into this more? How do we get started? Do you have any words of, do you have any suggestions for them?
Yeah, look, I think on one side, in terms of the big corporations, government, who are looking for ways to embed more purpose into their businesses, I feel like social procurement is the best way to start. That start buying from good businesses, get that kind of that ecosystem flowing within your business of where your supply chains, your service providers, whatever it might be, where you can procure socially, do it. And that in itself is going to start to create a huge ripple effect. And then for businesses who are leaders who are looking to start a purpose business or really embed more purpose, I feel like it's really important to sort of get real clarity on what the impact is you're trying to deliver, and then designing in a human-centered way. And so where you can, and when you can listen to the voices of people with lived experience, for me that is just essential. We can't design for real change if we don't do that anymore, which I think is becoming really apparent. So and really important. So that would be the biggest piece of advice to anyone looking to create purpose through their business too. Yeah,
brilliant. Thank you. I think that's gold. Lastly, how can people get in touch with you, Melanie?
Oh, you can reach me at Melanie at Scriibed with 2i's.com, or visit the website, join our mailing list to get some lovely juicy content in your inbox. And my phone number's on the website too. So please do reach out. I'd love to share more with you.
Brilliant. And we'll include all of that on the show notes as well. Melanie Greblo, thank you so much for joining us. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I wish you all the very best for 2023 and with Scriibed and Banksia Academy. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Carolyn. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the For Love and Money podcast. If you'd like to take a deeper dive into the purpose movement, visit us at thecauseeffect.com.au. And remember, doing good is good for business. So if you're not doing good, then what are you doing?